Thank you so much, Dr. Carrie Anne, for joining me for an episode of Professional Lunch today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Before we start, I like to say that Professional Lunch is grateful for KBLM Consulting. We are the one that trying to demystify the process of studying in the United States. So we are very grateful for KBLM Consulting. Now, Dr. Carrie Anne, please tell us who you are and what you do.
So I am a professor and associate dean here at North Dakota State University. I teach in the Department of Communication. And in the other half of my role as associate dean, I work with students across a bunch of different majors, ranging from social sciences like communication, criminal justice, to humanities departments like history, to architecture, theater arts. I get to do all sorts of different things in my work as associate dean.
Wow. I know I've seen you in the communication department. I didn't know your whole extent to that far. So how did you get into teaching? Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come up with teaching? How did you decide to become a teacher?
Yeah. So it was something that I arrived at probably near the end of college. Mm-hmm. I started off in college as a theater and music major. And then after taking a communication class, I got really excited about that and the possibility of working in that field. So I ended up switching my major to communication, keeping the theater and the music minor, which honestly have probably been more helpful to prepare me for like working as a professor than anything else that I could have done. So, so I was in communication. I was in my last year of my undergraduate program, and one of my instructors had an assignment where you were in charge of teaching one of the units to your classmates. And it was just such an amazing experience for me to try to think about, okay, what do other people know? How could I come up with something that would be interesting and engaging? I don't want to bore people. I want this to really go well. And so it had a lot of facets of what I had already loved. I was in theater because I liked live performance and engaging an audience and thinking about making those connections. I liked communication because that aspect of social science where you're kind of trying to figure out where other people are coming from was so interesting to me. And I saw teaching as an opportunity to combine a bunch of those things, and having that experience in college made me realize that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach college students. And so I found my way to graduate school afterwards, master's degree at Wake Forest University, and then my PhD at the University of Southern California. Lucky enough to be hired by NDSU. And I have been here for, I think this is my 14th year teaching at NDSU.
Wow. Oh, so you've lived in California for a while.
I was there for 4 years, before moving to the Great White North. Weather is a little bit different up here, but I grew up in Montana, so I at least was acquainted with winter.
Okay, good. So I'm curious. Tell me, what was your first day like when you started teaching?
My first day in the classroom, or just my first day?
Your first day teaching. I mean, your first day, the first time you get to walk into a classroom in front of a group of students. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so that would have been back in my master's program. I had the opportunity to teach students who were taking a course in public speaking, which, as you know, is the common sort of work assignment for graduate students in communication. And I was really excited about it because this is what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to teach. I was excited to have that opportunity, but I was also really aware of the fact that not everybody loves public speaking. So to go into a class where, there are people who are going to be really anxious, some people may be annoyed that they have to be there. There's just going to be a really big range when it comes to levels of engagement. That was certainly challenging. I would say that was intimidating. When you first start out teaching, you're pretty close in age to your student often. And so I was very aware of the fact that I was kind of like the same age as some of the people I would be teaching. And how do I show them that I am competent and I can be trusted and I can help them, even though I am very close in age. I remember kind of as a mantra in my head saying I have one more degree than they do, right? I have some credential here that makes me that makes me qualified to serve in this role. And I think that I wanted them to know that I was there to help them, because a big part of teaching for me is that opportunity to kind of to get to know where people are at, what they need help, what's going on in their life. And kind of, that's a lot of work that I do as an associate dean. So I was excited. I was intimidated. I was really I had high standards for myself. I wanted to get people excited about public speaking and help to allay those anxieties.
Yes. Oh my goodness. This is I think I'm when I'm thinking about when I'm listening to you right now, I'm seeing my own experience with that. As a
yeah, absolutely.
So I have you ever been in a situation where the students, because of the fact you guys are close in age, that they don't I don't want to say respect you, but they are being a little challenging to deal with at times?
I did have some experiences after I had first come to NDSU. So, dozen or so years ago, first starting as an assistant professor, still on the younger side, obviously older than students, but having a few instances with often an older than traditional age student who had, and in my mind, I kind of understand that as well, because when you return to college after you've been off working, you just have a lot of life experiences that your peers don't necessarily have. I can see how, I was someone who just went straight through, right? I did college, master's, PhD, and became a professor. And so then if you're sitting in the classroom, you've had a lot of work experience, you're being taught by someone who's just been in school. You may have opinions and share them. So I can recall a few instances where people were not the best versions of themselves in the classroom and needing to have follow-up conversations, because it's not just, to me, if you challenge a professor, right, that's something between you and the professor, but it also affects the community in the classroom.
Absolutely.
That was kind of why I would want to address it, because I want to have positive community in my classroom.
Yes, that makes sense. So tell me, as you start, you start teaching, can you think of what classes did you start teaching, when you started out?
When I started at NDSU?
Well, when you started teaching together, that means before.
So I taught public speaking as a master's student. When I started my doctoral program, I worked as kind of a discussion section leader for a class on rhetoric, on kind of strategic communication. As I advanced in my doctoral program, I taught classes on digital media and society, how it's changing industries like journalism, PR, advertising, work in general, how technology has altered that. And those later courses that I taught were probably the best preparation for the classes that I went on to teach here at NDSU, because my area of specialty or my research focuses on emerging technologies and how we adjust to them and develop norms and kind of interface with other humans using, we're talking on Zoom right now. How do we develop all these norms we have for Zoom? That's really interesting to me. And so I research and I teach on those topics.
Wow, absolutely. So I want to know, tell me, can you think of some of the highlights of your career, over the years, some of the things that you can say, give me an example of maybe a student that, you work with to bring them from one level to one level. Can you share some highlights of your career with me?
So I'm going to try and think in kind of two different stages of my career, because from 2008 to 2016, so that first 8 years or so, I was 100% a professor. That was the main work that I was doing. I feel like the main highlights from that portion often happened outside of the classroom. Whether that was kind of individual meetings with students that I was teaching, or students that I would have been their undergraduate advisor, seeing people come in their first year. I think that there's something about the field of communication. It's attractive because it's so flexible, right? That you come in and it's you could do almost anything, because communication is the number one skill that so many employers are looking for, and it aligns with so many different types of positions. And that's attractive to students. But then I would say like 2 or 3 years into your program, it starts to feel like really challenging, because you have to figure out what it is you want to do. And suddenly all of these options, which were wonderful at the beginning when you were uncertain, are now like you have to find a path. So I think that being able to help students do that, right, to help them to explore careers and to reflect on like their values, things that are important to them, help them negotiate with incredibly challenging situations, and to see them then walk across the stage and graduate. It's just like an amazing, and I know like I'm just one tiny part of that, but seeing them go from like a first year student when they didn't have any idea what they wanted to do, to kind of this person who has overcome all of these challenges, managed to complete all these classes, work at the same time, et cetera, and be able to graduate. Like these aren't specific. I can think of specific students where I was just like nearly, moved to tears to see them graduate, just because I knew how much they had gone through.
Yeah.
But like on the whole, I would say that was one of the big highlights of being like a faculty member and working with communication students to see them graduate. As associate dean, so that would be, like the last 5 to 6 years of my time at NDSU, some of the things that I'm most proud of or would consider highlights would be ways in which I've helped to kind of like amplify student voices or the student experience to the levels where people are making decisions. So let me give you kind of an example of that, because that sounds pretty abstract.
Yeah.
So maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I'm going to say 4, I did something called like a shadow a student challenge. And I did this in my role as associate dean. I found a student in all 3 of the divisions in our college, so arts, humanities, and social sciences. And I basically followed them around for a day, like, 3 days across the semester. I attended all of their classes. I went to extracurriculars. I bought them lunch, and they talked to me about kind of like what their life is like as a student, the challenges that they've had, the things they really loved about their program. And it was such a great reminder to me about how much like students are doing, right? And this is students at all levels, like, this, right? As a graduate student.
Yes.
And just how hard it is to continually like context switch, right? To be in like a Spanish class in the morning and then get on the bus and go downtown and do an accounting class and have all this like fire hose of information coming at you, to go to an extracurricular, to get your homework done, to fit like a job in on top of that. And I remember like the criminal justice student that I was, that I shadowed for one day, like his day ran through, there was like a constitutional law class going from maybe 7:30 to 10. And I was just exhausted by the end of the day. Like I consider myself to be a pretty high energy individual, but just to go through like this whole day with the student and to be at the very end trying to take good notes on a very detailed and complex lecture on constitutional law, like it gave me like so much respect for what like students are doing. And also it informed a lot of what I do as like an instructor. I try like in my classes to do like a moment at the beginning of like, let's reorient to what it is we're doing in this class, because I recognize you may have come from something where you were doing, very different things. Let's get your head around it. And also it informs some of the work I do as associate dean and trying to like teach time management strategies as well, because I see how many different commitments that students have.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. This is so, I'm enjoying it. I like this part. Now, we're going to go to the second part of the conversation where we talk about some of the things you love. And I assume that what you just shared with me is part of what you love doing. You like seeing students, how they manage to succeed in a very busy environment when, they're a student as they work and they do different classes and stuff like that. So please share with me 3 things that you think that you can say that teachers, as a teacher, you think that you really love about what you do.
Yeah, and I feel like that working with students is a little bit too generic. But one of the things that I really like is how different each like individual class of students can be. So I the class that I'm teaching this semester, which is qualitative research methods, teaching people how to interview and do focus groups effectively. I've taught that class every spring for like 12 or 13 years, but it's different every time because there's different students in it, different interests. We're exploring kind of different topics. And for me, like I'm kind of I don't know, I wouldn't even use like tinkerer to describe it because sometimes I will just like tear the structure of a course entirely down and rebuild it differently. But I'm a little bit obsessed with like constantly improving what it is that I'm doing. And I think that my job gives me the opportunity to do that because even if I'm teaching the same class over and over again, it never has to be the same class. I can make alterations in response to what I've noticed students get a lot out of, what students are totally confused by, right? Things that I could clarify and just, I did, because you were in my class that I do this like class picture at the end of the semester. And I think about how on the first day, there's all these people that I just like, I don't know, I'm meeting them for the first time. And then just by the end of the semester, like we're a community. Like, I just think about how that's, I don't know if that's true for you, but you just like, you think about like all the people you haven't met yet. And someday you're going to meet someone and have this like really like great connection. And sometimes it's just a 16-week connection when you're teaching, but to like know somebody better and to know a class better, like that's really magical. And I love that about teaching, that it's always, even when you're doing the same thing, it's always new because it's new coming through.
Yes.
Okay. So that's definitely something that I love. One of the things that I love, and this is probably more on the associate dean side, but that a lot of the things that I get to work on here at the university are with people who are similarly committed to trying to like support students and to make improvements, and especially to recognize like the way we could build processes that help everybody get help. So for instance, I work with people in the Department of Communication who are really amazing advisors. But I know that not every student at NDSU has an amazing advising experience because there's just, there's differences by programs and availability and interpersonal dynamics. And it's really, really complicated, right? But trying to think about how you could take the things that you see working and build systems that make it easier for more people to do that, to make sure that all students are getting to like meet with their advisor on a regular basis, to make it kind of easier to make connections with students. I really don't believe in just dumping additional work onto people's plates to be like, hey, like student advising needs to happen more often. Get to it. I think that if you want people to do something like that, you have to give them resources that make it easier. So I like that there are a lot of people at NDSU who have a similar kind of mindset and goal, and that like working toward a shared purpose. That can be one thing that is, it's not as present in your life as a faculty member because you're kind of, you're like an independent contractor in some ways, right? You have your classes that you're teaching, you have your research agenda that you're working on, and there's like, collaboration that's part of it, but it's still kind of like an individual enterprise. So having things at, as an associate dean, being part of groups or committees that I can work with other people, like have that shared purpose is really awesome. Those are two things. Am I looking for a third one as well?
Well, yeah, there are three, but you don't have to go into three. I know time is an issue here.
I had a very detailed too.
yes, that was good. So let's jump into before we jump into the third part of the conversation, I want to say that, Professional Lunch, we are grateful for Lindsay Binney Photography. Lindsay Binney Photography is, we work with them, and we want to say that we are grateful for them for being for supporting Professional Lunch. So now let's go to the third part of the conversation. Tell me 3 of the challenges that you think that, according to you, that teachers will or might face.
Yeah. So the first one that I would identify is burnout, which I think a lot of teachers at all levels are experiencing right now. That's not just a college instructor situation. And part of that comes from the fact that many people who put a lot of energy and effort into teaching, and so I'm talking about faculty within my department, within my college, they're doing a lot more than they did previously as teachers. So some of that is like needing to learn entirely new forms of using technology in order to, we have something at NDSU called high flex teaching, where you're teaching some students in the classroom, some are joining remotely. We have done a lot of work with students who are experiencing all sorts of challenges, like the number and nature of challenges that college students experience has increased significantly during the pandemic. So teachers are wanting to help students, doing what they can to help students, doing more reaching out, doing more reminders, trying to be more flexible while still getting people to the knowledge levels they need in order to be, a college graduate. But it's exhausting, right? That kind of work. And I think it can also be, there can be like a demoralizing component to it when you do all of that work, but the problems are just too big for one person to fix. And so I know that burnout of the extra effort, plus sometimes you can't save everyone, which is really like, I know that's hard for me as an instructor and an administrator, but that definitely contributes to burnout. And it's hard to find a solution for that, right? Because I wouldn't want to say, stop supporting students. That wouldn't be the right,
exactly.
right route. So trying to find ways in which we can try to remove other responsibilities that faculty have to help them, not quite have so much going on. A second challenge I would say is certainly over the past few years, I think that there is less, we've lost this like assumption of the value of college. And I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly and I explain it in a clear way. But I don't think that we like universities and colleges can proceed as if, it's just everyone assumes college has value. You need the college degree in order to do something, that you'd want to do with the rest of your life. It's just like the world is not that way anymore. Yeah. Plenty of people don't go to college and go on and do great things, leave college midway through, go on to do great things, etc. So we need to be doing more work as instructors to talk about like, what is the value of college? Like, why should people come and, spend that much, that large a chunk of their life, the money spent on tuition, student debt, those are all very real things. What beyond just like that piece of paper that says you have a bachelor's degree, what are students getting out of college? What is the value of that experience? I think we need to be talking about it more at orientation, in advising meetings, in classes. Like it's more than just that degree or the transcript or the title of this course. Like, what are the key skills? What are the networks that you're building? What are you like? How are you transforming as a person that makes this a worthwhile endeavor? Otherwise, people will leave, right? If you don't continue to make the case for that. So I definitely think that's a challenge. So burnout, continuing to make the case for the value of college. Trying to think from perspective as a teacher. Right now, certainly at NDSU, because of and this is true of universities across the country, like budget constraints makes it harder to do things that would be beneficial because people are just kind of being asked to do more with less, which is happening in a lot of industries. And so that's challenging if you are an instructor and suddenly you're given a new course because your colleague left and the university did not have the money to hire someone to replace that. And now you're a smaller department instead of the size that you were before. I think we're going to have to be creative about updating our curricula to say we can't offer what we had when we had 15 faculty if we are now at 12. Yeah. What is most essential for students? What do we want to prepare them to do? And how can we essentialize so people can continue to do really good work and not feel so overwhelmed, which probably connects back to burnout.
Yes. Oh, Dr. Carrie, you touch on a very, very important point here about, the worth of college and spending the money and the time and the energy to get a college degree. So what's next? Sometimes students cannot, after college, they don't get that setting where they can do what they are supposed to do with the college degree. And I think that, I should entertain the idea that we should have a professional lunch just to talk about that and expose that so that you can get attention, because it's not just NDSU. We're talking about colleges and universities in general. So getting the college degree is not just, just for the paper or just saying that I went to college, but at least you have the skills where the marketplace can be useful. And I think that's a very, very important point you touch on. Anything you want to add to professional lunch today? Because today I am so happy that I'm spending the time with you for a very special professional lunch episode. So tell me anything that you think you can add, because we have a few more minutes in our time here. So anything you want to add?
I mean, all I would add is I do want to give a shout out to my colleagues in the Department of Communication and the faculty that I work with in my college, because I see so much of the behind the scenes work that they're doing before they even come into the classroom, and the work that they're doing to try to support students individually. How attentive people are to mental health issues, how they're trying to intervene when students are moving on to academic warning, right? To stop that moving into academic probation, which then can lead to a loss of financial aid, bad situation, right? We want to get upstream of it. We want to help students as soon as we possibly can. And so that's one thing that, I appreciate as a teacher who cares about students. And then as someone who's trying to work at a higher level to make things better. That doesn't work unless you have people working in your institution who truly care about students and do this extra work. And I'm just super grateful for that. I think it could be so different at a different institution when people have just disengaged and stopped and been nope, not part of my job description, not going to do it. And the fact that NDSU is not like that people care so much, is why I have been here for as long as I have been, because I think that is not always true every place. So I want to maintain my gratitude for that and give them a shout out.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. This is such a great conversation we are having. Today, I have to say that we're having this professional lunch on Zoom, because this is what the world is now. And we have to adjust and adapt to it so that we can do what we have to do as professionals. Dr. Carrie Anne, I don't know how to thank you for today, because you touched on some very important points that I think that, I may humbly ask that, you in the future, we do another professional lunch where we center the conversation on some of these topics, because I think they are very important.
Yeah, that value of a college degree, I think, is something that we need to keep talking about in all sorts of places. So
yes, absolutely. So again, thank you so much for today and for your time. And I know you are very busy at this time of the semester helping students succeed. So I thank you and I appreciate your time.
Definitely. Thanks, Rico.
No problem. Professional Lunch is grateful for Infosectado. Infosectado is bringing you the latest in technology. Find them on LinkedIn and follow them for the latest you need to know in security, in information, and all the things that related to cybersecurity. Find them on LinkedIn and like them. Thank you, Dr. Carrie Anne.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.